Wyden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hovakimian, my hometown of Portland has been invaded by militarized federal law enforcement. These federal forces are beating, tear gassing, and detaining my neighbors. On Monday, Donald Trump promised to expand this invasion to other cities. If the line is not drawn in the sand right now, America may be staring down the barrel of martial law in the middle of a presidential election. Now, Mr. Hovakimian, you're a senior Justice Department official. You're in a position to know what's going on. And as you know, I informed you in advance that I would be asking questions this morning about the legality of what is happening in my hometown. So my first question is, do you believe that federal forces can patrol American cities over the objections of state and local officials and away from federal buildings?
Senator, I understand Portland is your hometown, and I understand there's a lot going on there right now, so I do extend my best wishes to your friends and family and constituents there. Senator, I will stand firm on the idea that Americans' right to free speech, to free assembly under the First Amendment are absolutely sacrosanct. Neither law enforcement nor the intelligence community should target or surveil Americans who are engaged in activity that's entirely protected by the First Amendment. This is a bedrock principle of our democracy. It's one that I stand by. Senator, peaceful protest is one thing and violence is another. And from where I sit, you know, law enforcement helping to quell violence.
My time is short.
Yes, Senator.
Nobody condones violence, and I have repeatedly said that. That's not the issue. The issue is whether that's a smokescreen for a federal takeover of local authority and local law enforcement. So, what is your reaction to what is going on in my hometown? Because I believe it is unconstitutional, and I believe the country needs government lawyers who aren't going to use the law as a smokescreen to justify this unconstitutional invasion over the objections of local officials.
Senator, as I began my remarks, I noted that the situation in Portland is volatile, and I do extend my, my best wishes to your constituents there. I have to say,
my constituents are interested in more than your best wishes. What they want to know is that these forces can't go wherever they want over the objections of local authorities.
Senator,
that's what they want.
Senator, the department is committed to enforcing the law while respecting and promoting the constitutional rights of all people. On this issue specifically,
I will tell you, the department is throwing the law in the trash can. This morning, a Republican, the first secretary of the department, said there is no way he would have allowed, as a governor, the federal government to do what is going on in my city. And you seem to want to extend best wishes to us and the like, and you're for the First Amendment, but I don't see any evidence that you're going to do anything different. And I'd like to hear that you're going to. So let me ask you one other question. Do you believe that unidentified federal forces in unmarked cars can drive around seizing and detaining American citizens? That's a yes or no question.
Senator, I believe in fully protecting the constitutional rights of American citizens, and I've done that as a prosecutor. I've done that as a DOJ official. And
that's not what I'm asking. What I'm asking is, do you believe that unidentified federal forces in unmarked cars can drive around seizing and detaining American citizens? That's a yes or no.
Senator, generally,
can you lean in a little bit more?
Yes, Vice Chairman. My apologies. Generally speaking, Senator, it's a great idea to identify oneself as a federal law enforcement officer. I will say that the department takes the constitutional rights of Americans very seriously. As you know, the state AG in Oregon has sued the federal government, and as is common, the Federal Programs Branch of the Civil Division of the Department is defending the lawsuit. The marshals are a named defendant in the lawsuit. So at this point, that there is ongoing litigation, and some of the matters you're asking about cut to the heart of that litigation.
That again is ducking the question. These are practices that are going on now over the objection of local officials, and you have equivocated. I consider these practices a massive invasion of the constitutional rights of my constituents. I think that these practices are essentially fascist practices that until recently would have been unthinkable in America, and your refusal to condemn what is going on in my hometown, and people know all about it. The first Secretary of Homeland Security was very clear about it this morning. These positions are not consistent with the position to which you've been nominated. Mr. Chairman, I intend to oppose his nomination.
Senator Heinrich. Senator Heinrich.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Hovakimian, in your current capacity at the Justice Department, I have a few questions that I'd like you to take for the record. You don't have to answer them today. They're fairly detailed, but I would appreciate a quick response. The U.S. Attorney for New Mexico told me yesterday that federal law enforcement agents will be sent to Albuquerque as part of the expansion of Operation Legend. The Justice Department states on its website that this initiative is intended to, quote, fight the sudden surge of violent crime. But as Albuquerque Police Chief Geyer has pointed out, homicides are down this year, and protests in our city have been mostly peaceful. The DOJ initiative is also intended to work in conjunction with state and local law enforcement officials, and yet the mayor and the chief of police were not consulted. I'd like to ask you, why now? What is the driving reason to send these agents to Albuquerque at this time? How is this initiative different than last year's Operation Relentless Pursuit? How will DOJ work with city officials, such as the chief of police and the mayor, to ensure cooperation, coordination, and some legal guardrails? Because we don't want the Portland model coming to the city of Albuquerque, frankly. And finally, what will this operation actually look like on the ground? If it's not intended to monitor protests, how exactly will these forces be utilized? Now I'd like to get to some questions that I would appreciate your answers to today. On June 26th, the President issued an executive order on protecting American monuments, memorials, and statues and combating recent criminal violence. According to public reports this week, an unclassified Department of Homeland Security memo, which I have requested, authorizes DHS Office of Intelligence and Analysis to engage in intelligence gathering against ordinary American citizens who may be participating in local protests. I'd like to ask you if you believe that the threat to property damage to monuments and statues specifically is a significant enough Homeland Security threat, not a local law enforcement threat, but Homeland Security threat, to warrant intelligence analysis and collection by federal agents.
Senator, with respect, I can't necessarily speak to what the Department of Homeland Security is or isn't doing. I can say that Americans' right to free speech and free expression, including free speech and free expression around statues and monuments, is of paramount importance to me. Those are bedrock principles.
In your personal judgment, do you believe that the threat of vandalism to particular monuments or statues rises to the level of necessitating intelligence analysis, especially given the fact that that comes at an opportunity cost? If we're gathering information on protesters at monument sites, we're not gathering information about white supremacy groups or other groups that have actually that have threatened violence?
Senator, I understand the question. My goal always as a lawyer, both in my current job and if confirmed in my future job, would be to provide considered legal judgments. And to do that, I need all the facts on the ground. You know, it's difficult to opine categorically on hypotheticals because
It seems to me, though, you answered pretty straightforwardly Senator Feinstein's question about Title 50 authorities. And this is the next logical step. This is the Title 50 authorities in action, right? So why is it hard to connect the dots for you between those two things?
Senator, there's a lot happening in the country right now, and there's a lot of facts on the ground in different cities. And your question was specifically about vandalism near monuments and statues. And
my question is specifically about gathering intelligence about protesters.
Senator, generally speaking, intelligence should not be gathered against Americans who are engaged in activity entirely protected by the First Amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Risch?